Thanks to the last speaker for the excellent introduction to some of my work and basically my dissertation. As Matt said, I'm Jessica Scheick. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Maine. And I'm going to try to cover a lot of ground, so I apologize that some of the transitions are a little rough because there's not a lot of time for words. So I just want to start by talking a little bit about where we are right now. I think it's a very exciting time to be in the field of ice-ocean interactions. It's a pretty young field. There's a lot of really great technology that is being developed and that is being used specifically for these problems. We also have a lot of capacity for collecting, storing, and analyzing data with lots of computing power, and I think that this has led to the publication of a lot of really exciting ideas. However, despite all of these awesome new resources, I'd like to focus a little bit on some of the already existing resources. And so the general theme of my dissertation is to actually use already existing satellite data sets, for example, some of those older Landsat data sets, to shed some insight on ice-ocean interactions through the observation of icebergs. In particular, I'm looking at things like fjord and coastal circulation, freshwater transport, heat flux, freshwater flux, and what I'll be focusing on, and the topic of my poster, is particularly bathymetry because of the important role that it plays in the transport of heat and whether or not that is able to make it to the tidewater glacier margins. As we all know, there are already a lot of wonderful bathymetry resources that are becoming available, but it's still something that needs a lot more development, particularly on the really fine fjord scale. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at a series of optical satellite images, and in particular fjords, and I'm focusing specifically on locating regions where icebergs become stranded and regions where icebergs are drifting. And what that does is it gives us a qualitative idea of what the bathymetry in a particular fjord looks like. For example, this is Karat Fjord, which the icebergs in this particular part of it are supplied by Rink Isbrae. And in the red, you can see that's an area where icebergs are stranded. And when you match that with current bathymetry maps, you can see that this method, even though it's very qualitative, does give some insight as to what the bathymetry looks like. And now I'm also trying to use some resources to quantify that bathymetry on a finer scale. So if we collect using some of the worldview imagery, we can derive DEMs, extract iceberg freeboards, and from that we can say something about the keel depth. Acknowledging that we don't actually know what icebergs look like underneath, we can still put some kind of constraints, numerical constraints, on the bathymetry of fjords that have not been mapped. In particular, if icebergs are stranded, we can get some depth maximums, and if the icebergs are still drifting, we can get some depth minimums. And so that is the topic of my poster. I hope you'll all come to see it. Because it is really important that we have these local surveys and information for including in our data models. Now I'd like to switch gears a little bit. I think that as we've seen there and have been talking about, there are a lot of really awesome resources out there already. We're doing a great job, I think, sharing our data and trying to incorporate it as best we can rather than, kind of holding on to it close to home. I don't think I need to remind anyone of this, but ice-ocean interactions is an interdisciplinary field, and I think that we do need to keep in mind as we're sharing our data that not only do we have a number of different fields, but that means we're using a number of different techniques, and we have a lot of different data formats that go with that. And I think that it's important to keep that in mind as we're sharing our data so that particularly those of us who are newer in the field are not sort of spinning our wheels, refiguring out how to open a particular data set that we've downloaded. And I think that this is especially important as we think about our data sharing and usability both with each other, but also thinking about it in terms of working with people who are not in academia, particularly working with locals who I think have a lot of valuable knowledge that they can contribute to our research as well as are interested in the work that we're producing. And I think that being able to have that work be accessible to them is really important. And so that kind of summarizes my final point of, I think working with local populations is really important and something that we should all strive to do, because you never know when you're going to walk down the street and someone is going to hand you a flash drive with a really awesome video of Jakobshavn calving.